A woman, 8 months pregnant, discovered her husband with her best friend, shattering her world. At her most vulnerable moment, during premature labor, the betrayers appeared at the hospital. Between contractions of pain and a broken heart, emotions explode when their eyes meet. A story about forgiveness, dignity, and difficult choices that will change lives forever. Prepare yourself for a journey of intense emotions that will touch your heart. Subscribe, leave a like, and comment where you're watching from. It was a typical Sunday evening in Salem, Massachusetts, with the sun setting over the historic colonial churches, when I decided to surprise my husband. 8 months of pregnancy didn't stop my eagerness to share the news. The baby's nursery was finally complete. I had spent the entire day arranging every piece of clothing, every blanket, and every tiny shoe in the closet I had decorated with. So much love. Months of saving so that nothing would be missing for our first daughter. Ethan said he'd be working on an urgent project at the office, something about deadlines and important clients. The same old story. I drove through the historic streets, caressing my belly while thinking about how wonderful it would be to share that moment with him. The office building was almost empty, as expected on a Sunday. I recognized his car in its usual spot, and to my surprise, parked next to it was her car, Megan, my best friend since high school. What a coincidence, I initially thought. She must have come to help with something for the project. An inexplicable chill ran down my spine as I went up in the elevator. The office door was slightly ajar. One look was enough for my world to completely crumble. There was no urgent project, only betrayal. Ethan and Megan entwined on the office sofa, the same sofa where I had sat so many times waiting for him to go to dinner. The sound of my purse falling to the floor alerted them to my presence. Their eyes showed surprise first, then panic. I couldn't utter a single word. My legs, already tired from the weight of the pregnancy, could barely support me. I ran out, ignoring their desperate calls, tears blurring my vision as I drove back home. It's funny how in 1 second your entire life can collapse like a house of cards. The 7-year marriage, the 2-decade friendship, the plans for the future. Everything crumbled in that moment. I returned to our house, now just my house, and sat in the middle of the baby's room, among teddy bears and colorful mobiles. What a cruel irony. While I was preparing a nest for our family, they were destroying its foundations. The initial shock gave way to anger, then deep pain. For 3 days, I ignored incessant calls from both of them. Ethan slept at a friend's house, respecting my space, at least that, while Megan flooded my voicemail with guilt-ridden audio messages. It was a mistake. We never meant to hurt you. It just happened. The empty excuses only increased my anguish. Who cheats accidentally? Who hurts an 8-month pregnant friend by accident? My mother-in-law, Mrs. Miller, a traditional lady and a respected matriarch in our community, showed up at my door with homemade baked goods and words of comfort, not knowing exactly what had happened. Disagreements happen, dear. You two will sort things out. If only she knew. I didn't have the courage to tell her. I didn't want to expose my humiliation, not even to her, who had always treated me like a daughter. It was during coffee with my mother-in-law that I felt the first contractions. A month early, my daughter decided it was time to enter the world. Between physical and emotional pain, I was rushed to the hospital. In a close-knit town like Salem, news traveled fast through the historic streets. Within hours, the waiting room was full of friends and family, all with poorly disguised looks of pity. It seemed the secret wasn't so secret anymore. And then, like a poorly written soap opera script, they arrived. Ethan and Megan, side by side, with expressions of genuine remorse. How convenient, I thought. Betrayal followed by redemption, just in time for the baby's birth. I almost laughed at the situation, if I hadn't been too busy with contractions. The delivery was complicated, lasting almost 20 hours. During that time, I found out from the nurse that Ethan hadn't left the waiting room for a moment, refusing to eat or sleep. "Your husband is really worried," she said with a knowing smile. I wanted to reply that he should have thought about that before sleeping with my best friend, but I kept the comment to myself. When I finally held my daughter in my arms, something unexpected happened. The nurse came in with a huge flower arrangement and a card. It wasn't from Ethan, but from Ryan, an old college acquaintance who had become a doctor at the hospital. The card said he had always had feelings for me and had heard about what happened. "I'm here for whatever you need," he wrote. Another irony. While my marriage was falling apart, new possibilities I had never imagined were emerging. The following weeks were a whirlwind. I returned home with Olivia, my daughter, and found Ethan camped out in the living room, determined to win back my trust. He had tidied everything, cleaned the house, prepared the baby's room, as if housework could mend a broken heart. During a heated argument, he revealed that the affair with Megan had been a single moment of weakness, precipitated by stress and fear of impending fatherhood. A single moment? I questioned with all the irony I could muster. How interesting. How many single moments did you need to overcome your fear of fatherhood? 5? 10? Or did you lose count? That same day, I received an unexpected visit. Megan brought documents revealing she was leaving her job in town to accept an offer abroad. "It's best for everyone," she said, avoiding my gaze. "I'm leaving for London next week." I watched her trembling hand as she handed me the papers. Part of me wanted to scream, kick her out. Another part just wanted to cry for the lost friendship. Instead, I just nodded and closed the door when she left. Some departures don't deserve goodbyes. 3 months passed. The routine with Olivia had established a silent truce between Ethan and me, who now slept in the guest room. Our relationship was reduced to practical conversations about diapers, bottles, and pediatrician appointments. He was a devoted father, I couldn't deny that. I saw in his eyes the genuine love for his daughter, the same look that was once directed at me. During Olivia's baptism, an important event in Salem's traditional community, Ryan showed up, causing visible discomfort in Ethan. The doctor had become a frequent visitor, always with the excuse of checking on the baby's health. His presence gave me a strange sense of silent revenge, especially when I noticed the poorly concealed jealousy in my husband's eyes. After the ceremony, during lunch at Mrs. Miller's house, I accidentally found old messages on a tablet left on the coffee table. To my surprise, I discovered that the betrayal hadn't been an isolated event, but something that had been going on for months before we were even married. Messages, photos, plans for meetups, all there, documented with the precision of a diary. My stomach churned. 7 years of marriage, and I had never truly known the man I shared my bed with. With the calculated calm of someone who has nothing left to lose, I photographed every message with my phone. Evidence. I didn't know for what yet, but something told me they would be useful. "Is everything all right, my dear?" asked Mrs. Miller, noticing my pallor. "Yes, just a little tired," I replied, putting my phone away. "Taking care of a baby isn't easy." She smiled, understanding, unaware of the storm brewing inside me. I confronted Ethan during the town's fall festival, right on the town green. It wasn't planned, or maybe it was, by my subconscious. We were there, among tourists and locals, when a mutual friend walked by with her husband, both smiling. "How do you two manage to be so happy after all these years?" I asked the couple. "Honesty," her husband replied, unaware of the trigger he pulled. Ethan swallowed hard beside me. "Honesty," I repeated, feeling the blood boil in my veins. Interesting concept, isn't it, Ethan? Must be something you read about in a book, because it's certainly not something you practice. The words spilled out before I could contain them, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. I showed the messages on my phone, listing every lie, every secret rendezvous. The scene quickly became the main topic of conversation in the historic town's coffee shops. It was then that Megan, whom I believed to be abroad, emerged from the crowd. Apparently, her trip had been postponed. She confessed right there that the messages I found were from a time before our marriage, when they had a brief relationship they never told me about. "That doesn't change what you did 8 months later," I replied, surprising myself with the coldness in my voice. "The date of the betrayal is just a detail in the catalog of your lies. The following months were about rebuilding, not my marriage, but myself." Ethan moved definitively into an apartment downtown, close enough to visit Olivia daily. Ryan, the doctor, became an increasingly constant presence. His kindness was a balm to my wounded pride, although I knew I wasn't ready for a new relationship. Some wounds need time to heal completely. 6 months after Olivia's birth, while attending an Easter service, I received a call from Ryan. I stepped away from the congregation to answer, feeling my heart race for no apparent reason. He confessed he'd been in love with me since college and proposed that we start our lives over in another city. I received a job offer in Boston. Come with me, you and Olivia. We can have a fresh start, away from all this. The proposal hung in the air like a tempting possibility. Boston. Anonymity. A new beginning. That night, telling Ethan about the offer, I expected an explosion of jealousy, perhaps even a desperate attempt to convince me to stay. Instead, he fell to his knees. Through tears, he revealed he had discovered a serious health problem and that his fear of leaving me alone with our daughter had been the catalyst for his self-destructive behavior. Cancer. The word hung between us like a dark specter. Tests had detected a brain tumor. He would need surgery and intensive treatment with an uncertain prognosis. I'm not telling you this to make you stay, he said, wiping away tears. I just wanted you to know I never stopped loving you. My fear of leaving and leaving you alone made me push you away before the illness did. Too convenient an explanation, I thought initially. More manipulation to keep control over me. But the scans he showed were real. The appointments scheduled, the specialists contacted. Everything confirmed his story. The medical diagnosis changed our perspective. Not out of love, but out of basic compassion, I postponed any decision about Boston. Over the next 9 months, I had to balance caring for Olivia, now over a year old, and for Ethan, who faced difficult treatments. Chemotherapy, radiation therapy, medications that left him unrecognizable. The strong, confident man I knew had transformed into a pale, fragile shadow. Seeing his daily suffering softened some of my anger, though it didn't completely erase the hurt. During this period, to my surprise, Megan returned definitively to town. Her trip abroad had been canceled for reasons she didn't explain. Even more surprising was when she offered to help, becoming a pillar of support, looking after Olivia while I accompanied Ethan to appointments. I'm not doing this to redeem myself, she said once, while playing with my daughter. Some debts can't be repaid. I'm doing it because I still care about you both, even if I no longer deserve a place in your life. Ryan, meanwhile, remained professional. Upon learning about Ethan's illness, he set aside his personal feelings and became the specialist overseeing the case, using his contacts to ensure the best possible treatment. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on me. The man who wanted to take me away was now fighting to save the life of the man who had betrayed me. When Olivia turned 1.5, during the town's traditional Founders' Day picnic celebrating Salem's history, I received news that changed everything again. Test results showed the treatment had been successful. The tumor had shrunk significantly, and the outlook was positive. Ethan cried upon hearing the result, not from relief, but from renewed guilt. I lost everything that mattered out of fear of something that might not even take my life, he said. That same night, Megan confessed she was leaving town for good. Realizing her presence, despite our partial reconciliation, still caused tension. You're strong, stronger than any of us, she said, before leaving. That strength intimidated me, you know? I always thought you were invincible. Now I know you're just human, like all of us, but with a capacity for forgiveness few possess. Forgive. The word echoed in my mind for days. Had I truly forgiven? Or just accepted the inevitable, adapting to circumstances as I always had in life? In a moment of introspection during Easter week, as church bells rang through the historic streets, I realized that my inner strength, my ability to move forward, and my dedication to my family had been tested to the extreme. The months of caring for Ethan had created a new dynamic between us. It wasn't romantic love that had been buried that Sunday afternoon in the office, but a kind of companionship forged in adversity. He had changed, or at least seemed genuinely remorseful. The therapy sessions he started during treatment helped him confront not only his fear of death, but also his destructive behavior patterns. Ryan, sensing the shift in our family dynamic, gradually distanced himself. Eventually, I learned he had started dating a nurse from the hospital. The news didn't cause me pain, just a slight nostalgia for what might have been in another life, under different circumstances. When Ethan was sufficiently recovered, we decided to have a frank conversation about our future. "I don't expect us to go back to what we were," he said, sitting on the park bench where we had our first date, almost a decade ago. "I just want to be part of your lives, in whatever way you allow." After much reflection, I proposed a gradual restart. Ethan would move back home, but into the guest room. We established clear rules, joint therapy, honest communication, respected individual space. It wasn't a fairy tale with a happy ending, but a pragmatic agreement between two adults sharing a daughter and a complicated past. We decided, after months of joint therapy, to renew our vows in the same church where we married, under the watchful eyes of the community that had witnessed our journey of pain and reconciliation, not as a celebration of eternal love, but as a renewed commitment to honesty and mutual respect. A second chance, with eyes wide open. The renewal ceremony was intimate, but significant. Among the guests, to my surprise, were Megan, who returned, especially for the event, and Ryan, who came with his new fiancée. Their presence symbolized the closing of a painful chapter. As everyone began to leave, Ethan handed me an envelope. Inside, I found tickets to Paris, a second honeymoon, and a letter where he promised to spend the rest of his life making up for past mistakes. Paris was a new beginning. Away from the streets of Salem and familiar eyes, we allowed ourselves to rediscover each other. Not as the young lovers we once were, but as survivors of a storm that almost drowned us. Conversations by the Seine, walks through the Luxembourg Gardens. Each moment was a small reconstruction of what we had lost. Upon returning to the States, I discovered I was pregnant again. The news came with mixed feelings. Joy for the new life, apprehension about the future. Ethan, now in complete remission, received the news with tears in his eyes. "I don't deserve this second chance," he said, caressing my still flat stomach, "but I promise to make the most of it." The pregnancy progressed without complications, unlike the first. Where before there was anxiety and then betrayal, now there was a watchful calm. It wasn't blind trust, but a conscious decision to move forward, one day at a time. Ethan attended every appointment, decorated the baby's room with his own hands, was present in a way he hadn't been the first time. Our second child, Michael, was born on a sunny April afternoon. Unlike Olivia's tumultuous birth, this one was peaceful, almost serene. When I held Michael in my arms for the first time, with 3-year-old Olivia beside the bed, curiously observing her little brother, and Ethan holding my hand, I felt we had reached a place I hadn't thought possible 2 years earlier. 2 years after that fateful day in the office, our family was gathered for Michael's baptism. Looking around, I saw Olivia running between the historic church columns, Ethan holding our newborn, and I understood that sometimes forgiveness isn't just a gift we give to others, but a gift we grant ourselves. I don't romanticize what happened. The betrayal left scars that will never completely disappear. There are days when I still wake up with the image of them in the office, days when suspicion creeps back in, but I choose each morning not to let the past define our future. Many people in town didn't understand my decision to forgive, to rebuild. I would never take him back. Some friends say, when they think I'm not listening. Others look at me with pity, as if my choice were weakness, not strength. I don't care anymore. I've learned that everyone has their internal battles, their own journeys of pain and redemption. Ethan's cancer has been in remission for almost 2 years, but we know the shadow of recurrence will always be present. This awareness of life's fragility has taught us to value the present, not to postpone important conversations, to express love and gratitude while we can. Megan eventually moved to Austin, where she started her own design company. We maintain cordial contact, mostly on holidays. We are no longer best friends, nor will we ever be again. But there's a mutual respect that emerged from the ashes of betrayal. She is Michael's godmother, a decision that surprised many, including herself. Ryan married the nurse and moved to Boston, as he had planned. Occasionally, we receive postcards from their travels, always addressed to the Miller family. He found his own path to happiness, just as we found ours. Mrs. Miller, my mother-in-law, never knew all the details of what happened. At 82, She continues to bake her treats and offer advice on raising her grandchildren. The secret to a long marriage, she always says, is knowing how to forgive. I look at Ethan when she says this, and we share a knowing smile. If only she knew how much truth her words carry. Today, as I write these words, Olivia turns 5. She's a lively, curious girl, with her father's eyes and my stubbornness. Michael, at 2, already shows signs of an adventurous spirit. I watch, my children playing in the yard, under the shade of the trees we planted when we bought this house, and I feel a deep gratitude for the journey that brought me here. I don't believe everything happens for a reason, that the betrayal and illness were divine tests or necessary lessons. I prefer to think they are simply parts of the complexity of human life. Mistakes, pains, choices, consequences. What matters isn't what happens to us, but how we choose to respond. I chose not to be defined by the betrayal, not to let the hurt become my identity. I chose, after much suffering and reflection, to give a second chance, not just to Ethan, but to myself. A chance to redefine what it means to love, forgive, move forward. This isn't a story about overcoming betrayal or saving a marriage. It's a story about discovering strength where there was only pain, about consciously choosing the path forward, even when all paths seem impossible. It's about learning that the human heart has an extraordinary capacity to rebuild itself, even after being completely shattered. I don't know what the future holds. Ethan continues to have regular checkups, always with that underlying anxiety of someone who has faced their own mortality. I continue working as a professor at the university, finding purpose in guiding young minds. Together, we continue navigating the sometimes turbulent waters of family life. There are days when everything seems perfect. A picnic in the garden, laughter around the dinner table, Olivia and Michael asleep between us in bed after a nightmare. There are other days when the shadow of the past returns, when I catch myself watching Ethan suspiciously when he's late or gets a text message. Trust, once broken, is never fully restored, but I've learned to live with this imperfection. 2. Accept that real love isn't a fairy tale, but a daily commitment, sometimes difficult, sometimes rewarding. If I could go back in time and talk to that 8-month pregnant woman who found her husband in the arms of her best friend, I don't know. If I'd tell her to run or to stay, maybe I'd just say that, regardless of the path chosen, she would find the strength to move forward, to raise her child, to rebuild her life, with or without that man by her side. The town of Salem remains the same, with its historic churches, its charming streets, its residents who know every detail of each other's lives. The church bells continue to ring outside our windows, marking the rhythm of time with their old melodies. Olivia now attends the same elementary school I went to as a child, walking the same streets I walked. There's a comforting continuity. In this cycle, a sense of belonging that transcends personal dramas. In the end, maybe that's what matters. Not perfection, but perseverance. Not the absence of pain, but the ability to grow through it. Not a fairy tale happy ending, but moments of genuine happiness amidst the complexities of real life. When people ask me how I managed to forgive, how I rebuilt my marriage after such a betrayal, I never have a simple answer. It wasn't a single moment of decision, but a long and painful process, full of steps forward and backward. It wasn't out of unconditional love or fear of loneliness, but out of a conscious choice to bet on the possibility of redemption, his and my own. I look at my wedding ring, now accompanied by a new ring Ethan gave me when Michael was born. They aren't just pieces of jewelry, but symbols of a journey that showed me who I really am, when all certainties are shaken. I discovered a strength I didn't know I possessed, a capacity for forgiveness that surprised me, a fierce determination to build the life I want, regardless of the obstacles. This is my story, not a story of victory or defeat, betrayal or redemption, but simply the story of a woman who found her way through the storm. A woman who learned that scars are not just marks of pain, but testaments to healing. A woman who chose, above all, to be the author of her own life. As the sun sets over the historic churches of Salem, just like on that fateful Sunday, I reflect on how life can change in an instant, how we can lose everything we thought was secure and still move forward. How the human heart, despite all its fragility, possesses extraordinary resilience. This is the true miracle. Not that we manage to avoid life's storms, but that we learn to dance in the rain. Not that we avoid pain, but that we allow it to transform us into wiser, more compassionate, more authentic versions of ourselves. And as Ethan calls the children for their bath and the smell of dinner fills our home, I know this is my place. For now. Not because fate determined it, not because I had no choice, but because I chose. And in that choice, I found my liberation. There are certain moments when I watch my family gathered in the living room, amidst laughter and shared stories, that I feel a peace I never thought possible again. It's not the naive happiness of before, but something deeper, more conscious. A joy that coexists with pain, that recognizes life's imperfection, and still chooses to celebrate it. In a historic town like Salem, where every brick tells a story, centuries old, my own story might seem insignificant, just another human drama among millions. But for me, it represents everything. My fall, my struggle, my recovery, my ability to look betrayal in the eye and say, "You will not define me." And maybe that's the greatest lesson of all, that we are more than the worst moments of our lives, more than the worst things that happen to us or that we do to others. We are beings in constant transformation, capable of creating meaning even from the most painful experiences. So, to the woman now reading these words, perhaps going through her own storm, I want to say, there is light after the darkness. Not necessarily in the way you imagine, not necessarily following the path you planned, but there is light, there is renewal, there is the possibility of a life that, although marked by pain, is not defined by it. And that, in the end, is all we can ask for. Not a path without obstacles, but the strength to overcome them. Not a love without flaws, but the wisdom to distinguish between what can be rebuilt and what needs to be left behind. Not a life without scars, but the understanding that sometimes it is precisely these scars that make us who we are.